The War Within, a unified reading of the art of war. Fragment 1, The Quiet Blade. War is not always fought with swords. It is often waged in the mind, where silence can be sharper than steel. A wise general does not march to battle for the sake of glory. He marches only when there is no alternative, and even then, his heart is tempered with strategy, not rage. Sun Tzu said, "The supreme art of war is to subdue the enemy without fighting." What then is this enemy? Not merely the opposing army, but pride, haste, fear, and ignorance. A true commander conquers these first. This audiobook explores not just warfare, but the war within. A general who knows himself is never surprised. He does not seek war. He waits for necessity. Preparation is his fortress, stillness his weapon. His movement is as a shadow across the field, seen only when it is too late. The terrain of the mind must be mapped as precisely as a battlefield. Where do you falter? Where are your ambush points? Before facing the world, know your own geography. Fragment 2, The Shape of Strategy. Strategy is formless. It cannot be held, only enacted. It is water adapting to stone. It is wind shifting to avoid capture. The general must be formless too, without vanity, without rigid plan. He must bend with opportunity, strike with clarity. All warfare is based on deception, Sun Tzu wrote, and so the wise warrior disguises intention as confusion, hides capability in modesty. He moves when advantage is certain and rests when the path is unclear. A rigid strategy is a brittle sword. The adaptable strategist survives storms. Consider the tides. They come not by command, but by celestial rhythm. So too must strategy follow rhythm, the rhythm of the opponent's movements, of terrain, of morale. Know the tide, and you will know when to strike. But the enemy has tides too. His anger is a storm, his fear a drought. Read these signs as you would the sky before war. To lead is not only to plan, it is to listen, to anticipate, to remain always aware. Fragment 3, Invisible Victory. To win before the battle begins, this is mastery. To shape conditions so that the opponent's collapse is inevitable, this is elegance. If you know the enemy and know yourself, you need not fear the result of 100 battles. Knowledge is armor, but not mere data. The general must know his army's hunger, his soldiers' resolve, the weariness in his own bones. He must also see through the masks of the enemy, to see where they pretend to be strong and where they truly are. The greatest generals do not rejoice in combat. They view blood as a tax paid by those who misread the field. They are not moved by anger, but by clarity. And when the victory comes, it is unseen. There are no trumpets, no banners, only silence, only peace that follows as if nothing had occurred, because the general shaped the war so subtly that the war itself never fully arrived. This is the quiet triumph, the blade not drawn, the enemy disarmed by their own weight. Fragment 4, The Moral Battlefield. All war is political, but all politics are emotional. The morale of troops is the beating heart of strategy. He will win whose army is animated by the same spirit throughout all its ranks. Unity is the greatest force, not merely obedience, but shared vision. Soldiers who understand why they march, march further. Those who feel part of something greater than survival become resilient. Thus, the wise general is not only strategist, but cultivator. He tends the souls of his warriors. He teaches them not to crave death, but to value life so much that they defend it with unwavering purpose. The commander who rules by fear builds an army that fractures at the first blow, but the one who leads with purpose inspires warriors who stand even when outnumbered. This is why war is not only won in the field, but in the hearts of those who fight, and those hearts are won in the quiet moments, in trust, in preparation, in shared silence before the storm. Fragment 5. The final field. There is no eternal victory. All conquest fades, all empires fracture, but the wisdom of the way endures. To win 100 victories in 100 battles is not the acme of skill. To subdue the enemy without fighting is the acme of skill. In the end, the greatest war is not won by defeating others, but by mastering the forces that seek to control you. Rage, ego, impulse. When you command these, you command all. Therefore walk not with a thirst for battle, but with the serenity of understanding. Carry your blade, but carry it sheathed. Let others rattle their sabers. You will win by standing still, by listening, by knowing. For the world is a battlefield of mirrors. What you see in others is often your own reflection. And the truest art of war is not destruction, it is alignment. So ends the unified path of the art of war. Let it echo not just in your mind, but in your manner. Let your life be a strategy, not of conquest, but of quiet command. The war within is the only war worth mastering. Fragment 6. The Shadow Doctrine. True power hides in plain sight. The most dangerous warrior is not the loudest voice, but the one you did not see, the one whose influence reshaped the course of events without ever entering the stage. Sun Tzu whispered across time, "Let your plans be dark and impenetrable as night, and when you move, fall like a thunderbolt." This is not just speed, it is concealment. The general who shows his full arsenal teaches the enemy how to respond. But the one who appears weaker than he is strikes from beneath the skin of the moment. Think of influence as the subtle current beneath a calm lake. It is invisible until the boat drifts unexpectedly. That is how the strategist must move, not by overt domination, but by shifting the conditions so that victory becomes effortless. To live this way is to step outside the noise of the world. You no longer argue, you redirect. You no longer chase power, you shape space. Your actions become so deeply aligned with outcome that you vanish, and still the outcome comes. This is the Shadow Doctrine, the way of the invisible commander. Fragment 7. The Warless Warrior. There is a time to draw the sword, but there is greater glory in keeping it clean. The warrior who lives by wisdom learns to avoid war altogether, not from cowardice, but from understanding. Sun Tzu wrote, "In war, the victorious strategist only seeks battle after the victory has been won. This means preparation is not about preparing to fight, it is preparing so you never need to. It is shaping diplomacy, alliances, deterrence, and poise. The best war is the one that ends before it begins. To be a warless warrior is not to reject power, it is to elevate it, to wield such internal order that external conflict cannot penetrate you. Others fight storms, you become the weather. You may be surrounded by those who live by reaction, by vengeance, by pride, by fear, but you do not move by those winds. You are grounded in the mountain beneath. Let this be your practice, not merely to win, but to grow beyond the need. Not to silence enemies, but to disarm the reasons for their enmity. And so peace follows you, not because the world is peaceful, but because your presence shapes it to be so. This is the highest form of warfare, to live without needing to fight at all." Fragment 8. The Echo of Leadership. The mark of a great leader is not the sound of their voice, but the resonance of their silence. Leadership, like warfare, is not about command. It is about influence, and the most powerful influence is often unspoken. A leader leads by example, not by force, Sun Tzu taught. This is a principle forgotten in the age of noise. The strongest command comes from the stillness of knowing. A general who knows his destination does not need to shout directions. He walks the path, and others follow. He becomes the map. In this, leadership becomes a mirror. The general reflects discipline, patience, and clarity. His army mirrors him. He reflects fear, and they fracture. He reflects steadiness, and they endure. To lead is not to stand above others, but to stand so clearly in purpose that others rise to match it. To become an axis around which chaos orbits, unshaken. In this still center, decisions come not from pressure, but from alignment. Leadership is not about domination, but about creating conditions in which others choose the right path of their own will. This is the echo of leadership, a legacy of wisdom passed not by word, but by example. Fragment 9. The discipline of delay. Impatience is the enemy's ally. Every warrior feels the itch to strike, the heat of momentum. But those who act too early hand their advantage to the one who waits. Sun Tzu warned, "He who is prudent and lies in wait for an enemy who is not will be victorious." To delay is not to retreat. It is to coalesce strength. It is to invite error. Time is a blade only the disciplined may wield. The one who waits watches, and in watching learns. The world will demand action, but reaction is not action. True decision comes from silence, from the space between the provocation and the reply. The general who can delay commands time itself. He does not spend his energy seeking windows of opportunity. He shapes the walls of the battle until windows appear. Let your stillness unnerve. Let your waiting teach the enemy how exposed they are. And then, when their balance breaks under their own momentum, strike, not with anger, but with certainty. Discipline is the mother of clarity, and clarity, when timed, is indistinguishable from fate. Fragment 10. The long peace victory is not the end. In fact, it is the beginning of the harder task, to hold peace without losing vigilance, to retain power without needing to use it. Sun Tzu spoke little of post-war life, but his principles echo into that space. When you surround an army, leave an outlet, not merely for strategy, but for mercy, for wisdom, for continuity. The wise commander does not sow humiliation. He builds bridges even as he tears down walls. He understands that cruelty sows the seeds of rebellion, and that peace enforced is merely quiet war. The long peace is not idleness. It is a constant tending, like a garden that must be pruned to bear fruit. Complacency is the new enemy. Power must be wielded without weight. Justice must be swift but kind. Those who win and forget the lessons of war soon face new enemies, often from within. Let your legacy be one of restraint. Let your empire be one of understanding. The long peace is a rarer art than war, and infinitely more powerful. So ends the continuation of the art of war, not as a manual for conquest, but as a guide to mastery, of self, of influence, of peace. The final war is this, the quiet refusal to become what you once had to overcome. Fragment 11. Terrain of the mind. The battleground is often imagined as dirt and blood, but the truest terrain is thought. Wars are not won where swords clash, but where intentions form. Sun Tzu taught to know the ground, high and low, wet and dry, open and obstructed. But the greatest elevation is insight. The worst marsh is confusion. He who maps the enemy's mind as well as his own will never be surprised. Each thought is terrain. Anger is a forest of snares. Ego, a narrow mountain pass. Fear, a bog that slows the army of reason. But awareness, Awareness is the open plain, where decisions move freely and swiftly. A general does not enter battle until he has walked this inner land. He identifies the traps not set by others, but by himself. Clear your terrain before your campaign. Sweep away assumption. Burn down the brush of delusion, and plant flags only in fields where vision is long and footing is true. You are both commander and country. The mind must be defended before the body. Win this ground, and no enemy will ever fully conquer you. Fragment 12. The ally called doubt. There is a silence before every battle where doubt visits. Most fear this visitor. They shut the gate and pretend certainty. But doubt is not the enemy. Doubt is reconnaissance. Doubt shows the cracks. It whispers of overlooked variables. It warns of ego in disguise. And for this, doubt should be honored, not obeyed blindly, but heard carefully. Sun Tzu prepared meticulously, never assuming strength alone could carry victory. He moved only when the odds were shaped, not when they merely seemed favorable. Likewise, the wise warrior does not dismiss the tremble in the gut. It may be instinct, it may be signal. To pause and listen is not cowardice, it is command. Welcome doubt as a guest, not a master. Let it speak its piece, and then dismiss it with decisions made in clarity. No victory is ever certain. But the one who doubts wisely walks closer to inevitability than the one who charges with blindness. Fragment 13. The economy of power. Power is not found in what you can do, but in what you choose not to. Sun Tzu waged war with minimal force. His brilliance lay in efficiency. A single maneuver could unravel a campaign. A single misstep could collapse a state. Power misunderstood becomes addiction. But true mastery is restraint. To possess strength, yet not flaunt it, this is form without aggression. To bend your enemy without battle, this is force without friction. The greatest generals do not win battles. They end them before they begin. Look at your life as a field. Every action costs energy. Every reaction spends time. Be frugal, hold your fire, let your presence be thunder, and your movement lightning, brief, focused, and irreversible. Power wielded constantly becomes noise. Power held wisely becomes music. And the most unforgettable note is often the one not played. Fragment 14. Invisible warfare. There are wars no one sees. No medals are given, no lands exchanged. These are the wars of attention, of influence, of subtle moves behind every conversation. Sun Tzu would recognize this. Invisible war is not deception for cruelty's sake. It is the art of shaping reality with no overt strike. It is the science of gesture, of positioning, of wordless redirection. The strategist of the invisible war sees more than most. He notices the breath before the argument. He reads the posture before the threat. He shifts alliances before battle lines are drawn. To engage in this war is not to manipulate, it is to dance. It is to move so skillfully that conflict evaporates. Invisibility is the highest form of presence. This is the war of parents with children, of teachers with students, of leaders with teams, not to dominate, but to harmonize, not to win, but to balance. And in this war, the most dangerous enemy is your own unawareness. Fragment 15. The mirror of the enemy. To face your enemy is to face yourself, reflected in reverse. Sun Tzu wrote, "If you know the enemy and know yourself, you need not fear the result of 100 battles." But what he did not say aloud is this: the enemy reveals who you are not yet. They expose your gaps, your unhealed wounds, your arrogance disguised as confidence. They provoke parts of you you thought were under control. A wise warrior studies the enemy not just to defeat them, but to complete themselves. If anger rises in their presence, examine your ego. If fear grips you, ask what you failed to prepare for. If you underestimate them, ask what in yourself you've overestimated. The enemy becomes teacher, and in time the greatest victories are not won against them, but with the wisdom gained from having known them. Fight not just to triumph, but to transform. Opening over horizon. In the pale dawn over mist-shrouded valleys, a quiet voice begins. War is a burden upon a state, but wisdom brings relief. Thus we embark, across centuries, upon the journey of strategy, Sun Tzu's art of war reimagined as one unified tale. The voice unfolds the first principle: know the way, heaven, earth, the commander, and the law. These 5 essential factors bind the fortunes of conflict. Way, the shared moral purpose from ruler to people. Heaven, the seasonal timing, weather, chance. Earth, the terrain and distances. Commander, the virtue, wisdom, benevolence, courage, discipline. Law, a nation's organization, logistics, marshal of command. As our narrative voice, I guide you through the realm of ancient kingdoms, where a general contemplates alliances, spies, and the moral fibre uniting state and soldier. Every chapter is more than aphorism. It is lived strategy, told in scenes of preparation, counsel, marching armies, disciplined encampments, second-bearing costs of war. The second theme arises: war costs riches and lives. Protracted campaigns exhaust the nation. Victory, not duration, is the measure of triumph. Thus our general weighs provisions, distances, daily expense, morale. He counsels, swift victory spares blood and treasure. The campaign must be swift, the strategy decisive, the purpose clear. Third master strategy without fight. Then he speaks of stratagem, winning without battle. The greatest victory is one that needs no clash of steel. He seeks to undermine the enemy's cohesion, to sow division, to capture minds before armies. Deception becomes silent arrow, misdirection the shape of victory. Thus begins the dance of feints, illusions, appearing weak when strong, strong when weak. Fourth, positional dispositions. Victory lies in secure positions. Before engaging, ensure that you are invincible and the enemy vulnerable. The general holds ground, scouts the foe's weakness, adapts to terrain. He maneuvers like water, taking no shape but filling advantage. There is no rush, only readiness. V. Energy and momentum. The voice weaves onward. Energy, momentum, unites many small actions into formidable power. Troops trained, orders clear, communication smooth, potential becomes kinetic. The general orchestrates reserve forces, pivot units, sudden surges. The battlefield hums with coordination, discipline, the rhythm of war. Sixth, weak points and strong ones. Now the general speaks of seeing without being seen. He is a shadow on the ridge, a whisper behind enemy lines. He strikes where the enemy is least prepared. The principle is simple: avoid strength, attack weakness. But to do this, one must know the enemy as well as oneself. He does not attack fortresses directly. Instead, he moves like wind through a forest, never colliding with trees, but always progressing. The general creates confusion. He pulls the enemy's attention to one place, then slips behind them. He shapes his presence to guide the enemy into error, like herding cattle into a narrow pass. His force is fluid, never fixed. The enemy cannot know where he will strike, because even he does not know, until the opening reveals itself. Seventh, maneuvering. Then the lesson of maneuvering. War is not just motion, it is calculated motion. Every march, every rest is chosen with precision. A wise general avoids long detours unless they serve greater advantage. Troops must be rested, spirits must be lifted, supply lines tight. He teaches us this: the army thrives on uncertainty when its leader does not. The general remains calm, a still pond reflecting the chaos of the enemy. He does not show his fear or ambition. He lets the terrain speak, lets his spies whisper, lets his enemy overreach. In the mountains, he positions his troops above the enemy. In marshland, he waits on dry ground. In forests, he moves with silence, never breaking twigs underfoot. One key truth arises: speed and surprise beat strength and numbers. A small force can rout a greater one if it moves faster, strikes smarter, and disappears before retaliation. Eighth variation in tactics. Now we enter the realm of variation. The general says, there are no constant conditions in war, only readiness for change. The rigid commander loses, the adaptable one prevails. When faced with an obstacle, the general does not ask, how do I break it? He asks, how do I go around it? When allies hesitate, he leads. When enemies overextend, he cuts them off. No tactic is sacred, no terrain is always good or always bad. The wise general uses night and day, rain and shine, rumor and silence. He does not repeat the same strategy twice, for predictability is the death of advantage. If the enemy knows your pattern, you are already lost. If the enemy fears what he does not understand, he is halfway defeated. 9. Marching and terrain. The terrain is a teacher, and the general listens. He scouts rivers, hills, and deserts with the eye of a hawk. He knows when a valley is a trap, and when a mountain path is salvation. He knows that an army spirit is shaped by the ground it stands on. In narrow passes, soldiers are tense. In open fields, they feel bold. In enemy territory, they fight harder. When they know retreat is impossible, they summon courage from despair. He never camps in low ground where fog and floods may strike. He never marches through unfamiliar woods without guides. He understands wind direction, rainfall, and the echo of hoofbeats. He speaks to his officers. Where you stand shapes what you can become, and so they walk with care, with purpose, with silence. The 9 terrains. The general now sits before a map of 9 kinds of ground, each shaping how battles unfold. His finger traces the lands not just with knowledge, but with instinct. He begins. There are grounds of mobility, he says, open lands where both sides may come and go freely. On such ground, avoid engagement unless you hold a decisive edge. Then, entangling ground. Territory that once entered is hard to leave. It tempts you forward, but ensnares your forces. Commit only if your retreat is secured or unnecessary. Temporarily contested ground lies between you and your enemy. Whoever takes it first gains the upper hand. Move quickly, with full resolve. Open ground lies deep in enemy lands, dangerous but potentially rewarding. It tests the army's courage and discipline. Intersecting ground is shared by multiple rivals, each with an interest. Here, diplomacy and deception matter more than might. Play one hand while hiding another. The 6th, difficult ground, rocky cliffs, swamps, harsh terrain. Avoid when possible, endure only when advantage demands it. Hemmed in ground, where exits are few and the enemy may block retreat, here you must fight with cleverness, not brute force. Desperate ground is the final type. No path of retreat, no rescue, no fallback. On such ground, men fight with the strength of 10. Fear turns to fury, hesitation to instinct. Here, the general must lead from the front. There is no room for second chances, and so the wise general adapts his commands to each type of land. He never uses one formation for all fields. The environment becomes a silent advisor, speaking of risk, urging restraint, inviting boldness. He teaches geography is not just space. It is pressure, it is choice, it is fate. 11. The 9 situations. Beyond terrain, there are 9 situations an army may face, and each demands its own conduct. There is dispersive ground when fighting in your own territory. The soldiers are close to home and prone to retreat. Keep them focused. Facile ground is just beyond your borders. Your troops may still turn back. Encourage them to advance with purpose. Contentious ground offers great reward to whomever holds it. Be swift, but do not rush blindly. Open ground invites freedom of movement. There, watch the enemy closely. His movements are as dangerous as his weapons. Ground of intersecting highways connects many regions and rulers. Whoever controls it holds the key to influence. Be bold, but ready to deceive. Serious ground lies deep in enemy country. Loss means isolation. Inspire loyalty and cohesion. Difficult ground is terrain that tires men, slows carts, breaks morale. Rest wisely. Avoid exhaustion. Hemmed-in ground offers no easy escape. Here, unite your force and prepare for sudden confrontation. And finally, desperate ground again, a place where death is more likely than survival. Paradoxically, this is where armies often achieve their greatest feats. The general concludes, put troops in danger and they will survive. Place them where they cannot flee and they will fight like lions. He speaks not of fear, but of human instinct, of how desperation carves clarity. 12th, the use of fire. The general now speaks with a harder voice. He holds no illusions. War is destruction. Among its tools is fire, swift, chaotic, absolute. There are 5 ways to attack with fire, he says, as soldiers stoke coals in the early dark. Burn enemy troops, burn supplies, burn transport wagons, burn arsenals and granaries, burn the ground itself, scorch the path of their return. But he does not speak as a pyromaniac. Fire is a force, unleashed only when nature, timing and necessity align. If wind is high, fire may turn against you. If the enemy is prepared, your flames may serve only to reveal your position. If the terrain is dry, you risk turning the earth itself to ash. Timing is critical. Use fire only when you are ready to follow it with force. Fire is not a weapon of independence. It is an opener, a force multiplier, a shock to be followed by blade and order. Fire is also symbolic. It signals overwhelming intent. When an enemy sees his world burned, he begins to question his cause. Fear ignites faster than flame. 13. The use of spies. Then the general lowers his voice. All the world grows quiet. He speaks of shadows. There is no warfare without deception, he says, and no deception without spies. The battlefield is only the final stage. The war begins long before swords clash. It begins with words, whispers, purchases in taverns, coded scrolls, a servant's betrayal, a merchant's bribe. There are 5 kinds of spies. Local spies, people of the enemy's land, men who know the paths and fears. Inside spies, defectors, officials, or servants with access to enemy leadership. Double agents, enemy spies turned to your service. Doomed spies, those you knowingly sacrifice to mislead the enemy. Surviving spies, your greatest asset, those who live to bring back truth. But spies are not merely tools. They are threads in the fabric of your strategy. You must protect them, reward them, trust them without arrogance. If your spies fear you more than the enemy, you will learn nothing. The general teaches this. All victory begins with knowledge, and knowledge begins with silence. You speak little and listen much. You let others reveal their plans. You learn to hear between words. A single spy can prevent a war. A single lie, whispered at the right time, can unmake a kingdom. Thus, the greatest general is not the strongest, but the best informed. And so the teachings end, not with conquest, but with stillness. The general walks alone at dusk, boots pressing into soft earth. The war is behind him, but its lessons remain. He has not glorified bloodshed, only understood it. He has not chased victory for its own sake, but as a necessary task, a burden to bear with clarity and honor. His war was not of chaos, but of design. He did not lead through cruelty, but through knowledge. His blade was not always drawn, but when it was, it cut with intention. To master war is to avoid war when possible, he says finally. To know yourself and your enemy so deeply that the fight dissolves before it begins. In the end, the art of war is not about conflict. It is about control, timing, awareness, and balance. And so the voice fades as the general disappears into history, leaving only wind and wisdom and the sound of banners in the silence.